F1 is back, baby! J-Bone here, and I cannot wait to recap the 2022 Bahrain Grand Prix with you here today. Before we get into that, though, I want to ask just one very quick favor from you all. If you enjoy the Formula Bone F1 show, consider sharing the podcast with just one friend who you watch Formula One with. That is one favor where you hit up one friend for Formula One. A lot of ones thrown in there. If everyone listening to this right now shared the show with just one friend, we would, and let me check the math here. Okay, you got to carry the one. E equals MC squared. Pythagorean theorem. Okay, yeah, we would double the size of the show. If you all just shared the podcast with one friend, that's all it takes. So please consider sharing the show with just one friend who you love to talk about Formula One with. Send me screenshots, by the way, of you sharing the podcast with a friend, and I will repost them and publicly praise the crap out of you. I promise. Thank you, as always, for the support. It truly means the world to me, and I love you like Gunter loves K-Mag. Now, at least. Maybe not in years past. All right, here we go. This is the Formula Bone F1 show. J-Bone! Welcome back to the Formula Bone F1 show, the Formula One podcast that never once has talked smack about Haas. Please don't check the receipts on that. I am Jared Borslow, but you can call me J-Bone. Thank you so much for joining me here today. And away we go. Today's first topic, of course, recapping the 2022 Bahrain Grand Prix, the 2022 season opener this past weekend. It was actually yesterday, if you're listening to this on Monday when it was released. And what a way to start the season, you guys. It's safe to say that the new regulations are working thus far, as there was a ton of close following and overtaking and just great racing all day long. At one point during the broadcast, the timing tower literally just stopped working and they just shut it off. So the left side of the screen was just, regular racing camera, and there was nothing telling us where everybody was, what their lap times were, what the intervals were. We saw nothing for like 10 minutes. It was bizarre. And I'm wondering if that's just because there were so many overtakes and so many different things happening that it just literally couldn't keep up. It was not used to having to be updated this frequently with everything that was going out there on the track. Not sure, but hopefully they do work out all these graphics issues, because qualifying was an absolute mess. If you were watching qualifying, you had no idea what was going on. I remember being like, oh my God, George Russell, purple sector, is he going to get P1 here in Q3 at the last second? And it's like, no, actually, George Russell locked up at turn one, and he is nowhere even close, and he's going to qualify in ninth. And you're like, what the heck? There were so many purple sectors in qualifying that were not actually purple sectors. It was like Oprah Winfrey out there. You get a purple sector. You get a purple sector. You get a purple sector. Please fix this, because there's only so much excitement I can take. And that was a bit too much for me. Not going to lie. On my Bahrain Grand Preview podcast, the podcast right before this, I gave you 4 storylines to follow throughout the race weekend. Let's go and see how those shaped up. The first one was the whole our Mercedes sandbagging situation. And I think we can all firmly agree that no, they have not been sandbagging here in the preseason, and they are legitimately having some early season struggles. The final race classification looks pretty kind to them. If you didn't watch the race and you just go back and look at the classification, you're like, okay, P3, P4, with the struggles they've been having, pretty good. Anyone who watched the race knows that those would be a P5 and P6 respectively, but the Red Bulls had that insanely dramatic late race fuel pump issue. Both of them did the same issue that that would have otherwise prevented the Mercedes from, getting a podium. However, the Mercedes definitely were happy with how the weekend shaped up. I mean, they were definitely set up to finish behind both Ferraris and both Red Bulls and be firmly in that third place position. But the Lady Luck sometimes smiles upon you. As Lewis knows, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Don't think what happened here in Bahrain makes up for what happened in Abu Dhabi at the end of the last year to him, but he's going to take whatever he can get at this point because he thinks he deserves it, and I would argue he does. So the final race classification, like I said, it looks nice to Mercedes, but it's not all hunky-dory for them, okay? Given the clear issues that Mercedes is having right now, P3/P4 is a dream result for them. As George Russell said after the race, if you told him that they would be taking a P3 and a P4 before the race happened, they would have been like, yes, please. Please give me some. Just like Toto is like, please give me some pumpernickel with butter, tomato, salt, but he wants it to be like a cookie, really crunchy, that whole thing. Toto would have taken it like his pumpernickel. Now, Mercedes have some of the best engineers in the world, so do not expect them to be backdooring podiums all season long. I think they're going to front door one soon, not backdoor it, even though I'm not entirely sure what front dooring means. I don't know if that means you're getting first or it's just like a very solid P3 and not just like a backdoor P3. Unclear. The next storyline to follow was how high Ferrari hopes were going in to the Bahrain Grand Prix. And as it turns out, they were exactly as high as they should have been. As the Tifosi cheered their beautiful drivers, beautiful on the track and physically, to a Ferrari 1-2, the team's first 1-2 finish since 2017. The Ferraris dominated all weekend long, and despite the fact that this 1-2 finish was majorly assisted by the Red Bull's fuel pump issues, because Max was looking like he was going to get P2 there, you definitely cannot say that the Ferraris did not deserve a 1-2, because they absolutely did. They've been crushing it in the preseason. They did a great job in qualifying. Now, we got some great wheel-to-wheel battling as well between Max and Charles Leclerc. That was a nice little taste of the kind of close racing we hope to see thanks to the new regulations. Now, hopefully that Red Bull fuel pump doesn't keep exploding and preventing us from getting more of them. And also, it's fun to note, if you saw the post-race interview that Charles was giving where Max walked up to him mid-interview and they had like a nice little handshake and a little hug and we're talking about the race, this looks like it's going to be a much more civil title fight, if the title fight does end up being between Max and Charles Leclerc, than last year's title fight between Lewis and Max. So I think Charles Leclerc and Max grew up together. They've been racing together for, I guess, like over a decade at this point. So it's a little bit more civil. They're more so like contemporaries than it being like a upstart new guy in Max and one of the GOATs, if not the GOAT, Lewis. So it'll be a different look optically, I think. And I will be interested to see if Max does pull an aggressive move on Leclerc and pisses him off, if we're going to get it looking a little bit less nice than it was today, when Leclerc had no reason to be mean to Max because Max did not finish the race. Well, I guess technically he was classified, but his car didn't finish the race, and Leclerc got P1 with his teammate getting P2. So I'm more so thinking it'll be about Leclerc eventually getting mad than Max, because Max is generally just always mad. So it's less interesting than when Leclerc gets mad. It is looking like it is Ferrari's season to give away at the moment, and we are in for some intense car development and driver battles between Ferrari and Red Bull in the short term, and perhaps Ferrari, Red Bull, and Mercedes in the medium or long term. We could easily get to a point this season where on any given weekend, either of those three teams has a legitimate shot at winning a Grand Prix, which is exactly what we all wanted out of these new regulations. And I think we are in for an insanely exciting season. And I think we're going to get some midfield teams winning Grand Prix this year. I do. It's going to be exciting. I would love a K-Mag victory. Could you imagine? We're going to get into K-Mag here right now, actually, because the next storyline to follow was Haas's battle to be in the points, just in the points. That was the storyline. Are they going to get back in the points? And if this was not your favorite storyline to follow, you have no soul, because my driver of the day. Who voted for Leclerc over Magnussen? Like, Leclerc was on pole. Okay, he won from pole. That's great. He did a great job. He had a flawless race. Great job, Leclerc. It's not K-Mag, though. It's not K-Mag in a Haas going P7 to P5. You kidding me? My driver of the day, Kevin Magnussen, put forth a legendary Viking effort, as Gunter Steiner would call it, that will not soon be lost to time, as he gave Haas, who had one of the worst full-length F1 seasons of all time last season. Of all time. I think Haas had one of the worst seasons of all time. He gave them an incredible P5 finish that surely has Gunther Steiner regretting calling K-Mag a wanker and an idiot so many times. This is only the 5th top 5 finish in Haas's history. And it was accomplished by a man who was not even planning to be in a Formula One car this season as of like 2 weeks ago. Insane that K-Mag could get P5 in the first race of the 2022 season. Truly incredible, and something that should have American F1 fans rallying around Haas, at least until Andretti Autosport gets their team and puts an American on the grid, in which case, when there's an American on the grid, the Americans, you can still cheer for Haas because they're an American team, but I think a lot of people are gonna move over to Andretti. Colton Herta is on the grid. Come on. Gonna be electric. And speaking also of other Haas drivers, aka the only other Haas driver, Mick Schumacher came this close to his first ever points finish. He finished P11. So close. So close. Things have maybe never looked brighter for Haas, who are currently in solo third place in the World Constructors' Championship, which just feels weird to say after bashing them the entirety of the 2021 season. They're in third, and they're looking good. My final storyline to follow was how Zhou Guanyu would handle his first ever Formula One race. He is the lone rookie this season. So, when there's a new guy on the grid, you don't know how they're going to react. You could be like Yuki and get points in your first ever race, or you could be like Mazepin and just spin out into eternity, like 3 turns in to your first ever Grand Prix. Now, Zhou Guanyu ended up being more like the former because he handled his debut mightily, becoming only the second driver since 2017 to score points on their F1 debut, finishing 10th, with his Alfa Romeo teammate Valtteri Bottas finishing 6th. A double points finish for Alfa Romeo is incredible to see after how poorly they've looked in recent years. And watching Zhou's emotional celebration and interviews afterwards has me massively rooting for Zhou Guanyu this season. I'm sure these points that he earned, I guess this 1 point that he earned, was made all the more emotional by the fact that he has an Oscar Piastri-sized chip on his shoulder and is out to prove to the world that he is more than a pay driver, that he deserves his seat, and that he is going to be competing for points every race weekend. So excited to watch Zhou Guanyu. Something I really wanted to talk a little bit more about, because a lot of people have been hitting me up, and I think it's pretty important, is the Red Bull fuel pump issue. It's what caused both their cars to retire on Sunday, and it could possibly be part of a larger problem that affects every team on the grid. You heard that right. Even your team, whoever that may be. Former F1 engineer Engine Mode 11 noted on Twitter that, quote, "The fuel pump is a standard part supplied to all teams by the FIA and Magneti Marelli." Now, he is saying that because the fuel pump is a spec part that is used by every team, supplied by the FIA, we may see other teams start to have the same race-destroying issue with the fuel pump that Red Bull just had. Furthermore, to make things more dramatic, it has been reported that the FIA and teams were aware before this race weekend that fuel pump failures were causing petrol leaks that destroyed electronics and were making cars inoperable. Now, it's still possible, of course, that it was improper installation or a mechanical issue on Red Bull's part that caused this component to fail, especially because they were the only team to experience this failure this past weekend. AlphaTauri's fire, by the way, was a separate issue. It was, Red Bull powertrain car, but it was not a fuel pump issue, that one. Interesting fire there. You never like to see fire, you know? But Gasly was fine, luckily. So this potential fuel pump issue is certainly something we should all be on the lookout for as the season gets underway. Now, of course, in this recap, I need to now check in with you all regarding how my top 5 finishers prediction from the previous podcast played out. I want to do a spin zone here. I did correctly call 4 of the top 5 finishers, okay? Now, the issue is that my order of Max, Carlos, Hamilton, Leclerc, Russell was slightly off, I'll admit, as I only correctly predicted Hamilton's P3. But some might argue that was the most shocking result of them all, and that J-Bone is amazing for having predicted it. I'm just saying. Just something to think about, okay? Congrats to Leclerc, congrats to the Ferraris, congrats to Haas. What an amazing race. I cannot wait for the next race this coming weekend. Support for the Formula Bone F1 show is brought to you in part by Manscaped, where you can get 20% off your order plus free shipping with code FBO at checkout. Listen up. When is the last time that you took a real shower, complete with all the fixins? Manscaped's all-in-one hygiene, skin, and hair bundle is designed to upgrade the everyday man's shower routine from head to toe. Your skin, hair, and balls deserve this. Let me walk you through the 6-step Manscaped shower routine that could be all yours. Step 1, lather on the cologne-infused ultra-premium body wash with aloe vera and sea salt to keep your skin feeling clean and moisturized all day. Not sure if you heard that correctly, but this body wash is cologne-infused, so that special someone in your life will absolutely love it. Step 2, it is hair care time, folks. Apply the 2-in-1 shampoo and conditioner that cleanses and nourishes in one easy step. The non-greasy formula has a base of coconut water, green tea, aloe, turmeric, and sage. It sounds delicious, but you can't eat or drink it. Apply it to your armpits and pubic region as well. Step 3, once you hop out of the shower, protect yourself from body odor by applying the Manscaped aluminum-free deodorant. This deodorant dries clear and is also cologne-infused. You've seen a pattern here. Step 4, if you have tattoos or dry skin, I have very dry hands right now, okay? It's rough. Then what you need to do is hit your skin with a hydrating body moisturizer spray. Step 5, apply the Manscaped lip balm, which I have right here next to me. It's great. Unbelievable lip balm. It's a free gift when you purchase the Ultra Premium Collection. And last but not least, the Lawnmower 4.0, which I also have here next to me, if you're watching on YouTube, is waterproof, and it exists to clean off any unwanted body hair. It's a major key. Very important in the shower routine. Got to keep it all trimmed. Trim. This elite trimmer is designed to trim hair on loose skin, wink, wink. Although your balls might look like punching bags, don't treat them like one and benefit from Manscaped's proprietary skin-safe technology. This new bundle that I just talked about will change your life, and I want all of my listeners out there to live their best lives in and out of the shower. It's time to upgrade your shower products from that stuff you've been using forever to high-quality goods. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code FBO. It's the letters FBO at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping at manscaped.com. Use code FBO. There is a link for that deal in the description of this episode. Thank you to Manscaped for supporting the Formula Bone F1 show. Next up, it is time to respond to some Bahrain Grand Prix themed voicemails left by Formula Bone F1 show listeners on the Bone Phone. After every race this season, I will be doing one of these race recap podcasts, just like the one you're listening to right now. And a large part of them is me responding to voicemails left by Formula Bone F1 show listeners on the Bone Phone, which is my hotline, the Formula Bone hotline. That number is 1-833-200-0966. Add it to your speed dial. So during or after each race, whenever you have an interesting thought, hot take, complaint, or anything else that you think other people should hear, make sure to give the Bone Phone a ring for a chance at your call being played on the podcast. We have 5 calls here today. All these calls were called into 1-833-200-0966. Maybe next week you'll hear your voice. Without further ado, here's the first call.
What up, J-Bone? It's Graham. I'm calling you from a NASCAR race in Atlanta to talk about a Formula One race that happened in Bahrain. I just got to ask, what do you think this means for Red Bull for the rest of the year? Are we going to be looking at some electrical, some engine problems, some power plant issues, or you think they're going to kind of get this cleaned up before we get into next week? Let me know, and love the pod, and we'll continue to be listening throughout the season. Peace.
So I personally think that the fuel pump issue is really the only thing that kept Red Bull from finishing with 2 drivers in the top 4 at the Bahrain Grand Prix. I would personally, if you're asking me, J-Bone, I would rather be Red Bull than Mercedes right now. As I think Red Bull know their issues, whereas Mercedes are still figuring out what their issues are before they can even put out a plan of attack in order to fix them. The Red Bull powertrains overall seem better than the Mercedes powertrains, which really were struggling in Bahrain. Minus the works Mercedes engines that are used by the Mercedes F1 team, not a single Mercedes engine finished higher than P12. That's crazy. Every Mercedes engine besides the works one was completely outperformed by the Renaults and the Ferraris. Obviously, the Ferrari powertrains look the best. Now, I've heard that the switch over to E10 fuel may be the culprit here, with that switch requiring a ton of power unit changes that are still kind of being perfected. But yeah, the Mercedes engine for the Mercedes team looking good, but the fact that it's looking so not good for other teams makes me think that it's just not right now as solid of a powertrain as the Red Bull one, minus the fuel pump, the Ferrari one. So I think Red Bull, if they didn't have this fuel pump issue, would have gotten at least 2 drivers in the top 5, if not 2 in the top 4. Really unfortunate that they had that. I'm really hoping they can fix it before Saudi Arabia, just because you hate to see a good car get retired for a mechanical issue like that. Not even considering the fact that it was 2. Absurd. And I know a lot of people hate Red Bull, so I'm sure they were really happy, but you know, more competitive cars is always more fun. So I think that they're going to have this fuel pump issue fixed. It seems like it's just a part issue, right? Now, they might also mechanically have done something that would cause the fuel pump to malfunction. And again, they have some of the best engineers in the world. A lot of them they hired away from Mercedes. So I do think that they will have this figured out for this weekend in Saudi Arabia. Next call.
Hey, J-Bone, this is Sam from Milwaukee. My question is, since we know that it looks like Mercedes, Red Bull, and Ferrari are going to be the top 3 teams this year, what's the storylines you want to follow after those teams? Can Haas hang on and finish in the top 5 for the constructors? And what the hell was going on with McLaren today?
So I am honestly as excited for the midfield constructor battle this season as I am for the World Constructors Championship battle. I legitimately think that Haas, Alfa Romeo, AlphaTauri, Alpine, and yes, even somehow McLaren all have a shot at finishing 4th behind Ferrari, Red Bull, and Mercedes. As far as what's going on with McLaren, as you asked, I wish I knew the full scope. I know a little bit. Now, Danny's performance specifically could be chalked up to how he's only done like 32 laps in the car since Barcelona before this race. But it's clearly a bigger issue than that. The car is said to be experiencing brake issues and is just not generating enough grip of any kind, whether that be aerodynamic, whether it be mechanical, and who knows how long it will take them to figure it out. But I'm not counting them out of being able to get it figured out here in the shorter term because they have some phenomenal resources at their disposal. But I wouldn't hold my breath. I would not hold my breath. So I think they'll have to have a massive turnaround to have a shot at 4th after what we all just saw in Bahrain. It's looking bleak. A lot of McLaren fans out there. I like I said, I think McLaren are arguably in America the most supported F1 team. And if they have a goose egg of a season, if they just totally just crap out this year, it will be squandering of hundreds of millions of dollars of potential revenue that they could have had more of if they were better. But we shall see. They have great resources, great drivers. I'm sure they are going to do everything they can to make their car as competitive as possible. Now, as far as the rest of the midfield goes, if I had to do a way too early 2022 World Constructors Championship prediction of how all the teams are going to line up at the end of the year, it would be this. First, Ferrari. Second, Red Bull. Third, Mercedes. Fourth, AlphaTauri. Fifth, Haas. And I think it's going to be a really tight race between Haas and AlphaTauri. But I'm giving AlphaTauri the edge, though I would not be surprised at all if Haas took fourth. Sixth, Alfa Romeo. Seventh, Alpine. Eighth, McLaren. Ninth, Williams. And 10th, Aston Martin. Do not come at me, McLaren fans. I'm just speaking my truth. And if you do want to come at me, call into the Bone phone at 1-833-200-0966. Next call.
Hey, J-Bone, D-Bone here. With all the Formula One changes, on a scale of 1 to 10, how disappointed are you that we will no longer get to hear the race director and the team principals or whoever, Toto Wolff, Christian Horner, talking over the radio mid-race? That was, to me, part of the most exciting and interesting back and forth, besides the driver and team principals. Just hearing them beg to get their call. No, Mikey, this is so not right. Take it easy.
What's up, D-Bone? On a scale of 1 to 10, I'd say I'm like a 6.5 disappointed. They were supremely entertaining, as you all know. But at the end of the day, it's just incredibly biased grown men whining and complaining and lobbying for their team to try to get a favorable decision. So it's not like we're missing out on anything groundbreaking. It's just adding more to like the gossip and drama of F1, which is still an important aspect. But it's nothing crazy we're missing out on. It's not like they're like, hey, we're doing no team radio at all. Like that would be something that really changed up the enjoyment level for all fans. Now, of course, I will miss getting gems like, no, Michael, no, Michael, that is so not right. But in terms of making sure the sport stays properly officiated and less influenced, and that the sporting director, or the race director, is able to make better decisions, it's probably the right call. Now, as far as what mid-race communication between teams and the FIA looks like this season, here's an excerpt from an article on motorsport.com by Jonathan Noble. The FIA has changed its procedures for this year, with teams no longer having direct radio communication at all times with the race director. Any conversations that do take place between the teams and race control will be done through another representative in race control who will then forward on any important information to the race director. Support for the Formula Bone F1 show is brought to you also by MyBookie, where you can win money using your knowledge of F1 and other sports, like college basketball, because it is, of course, March Madness right now. From all of the biggest games to the smallest events, make every bet worth your while with MyBookie on their website, MyBookie.ag. And right now, you can start your MyBookie journey off by doubling your first deposit instantly before you even place a bet because of MyBookie's first deposit bonus. All you have to do is sign up and deposit using my exclusive promo code FORMULA at MyBookie.ag. Stipulations apply, so make sure you read through those before you deposit. Now think about this. Rack your brain around this. Were you one of those people who was 100% certain that Charles Leclerc was going to win yesterday's race? Because right before the race, Leclerc's pre-race odds to win were plus 135, meaning a $20 bet would have won you your money back, so your $20 back, plus an additional $27 that you could have used to buy a bottle of Italian bubbly with which to celebrate the Ferrari 1-2 with the rest of the tifosi. Okay? If you think you know F1, put your effing money where your F1 mouth is. Head to mybookie.ag today to redeem your double deposit bonus so you can get in the game and start winning big today. That's promo code FORMULA to receive double your first deposit instantly in your account. No hassle, no wait, stipulations apply. There's a link for that deal in the description of this episode. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie at mybookie.ag, promo code FORMULA. Thank you to MyBookie for supporting the Formula Bone F1 show. Time for some more voicemails.
Hey, it's Ellie from Austin. I'm calling because I'm wondering how much you think that Max and Red Bull ultimately were going to fail regardless if the engine and power was actually working. It seemed like he wasn't actually looking after his tires. His brakes were overheating, and he was just way too aggressive at the beginning. I feel like this is a sign for Max becoming overconfident and not listening to the engineers when it comes to the car and maintaining actual strategy during the race. Thoughts? Let me know.
I definitely do not think that Max was capable of catching Leclerc regardless of the fuel pump issues. He was able to challenge Leclerc at times, mostly kind of in like the first third of the race or so. But in doing so, he was really putting stress on his car with a lot of racing left, while Leclerc was running a very smooth race. Leclerc even said after the race that he was letting Max pass him so that Max was ahead going into the DRS detection zone so that Leclerc would get DRS on him to pass later on. Leclerc is already thinking one step ahead. Max was able to make some great dives, put in some good moves, but he was really putting a lot of stress on that car. I think all of this was just Max being Max and racing aggressively and doing all he thought he had to do to gain an advantage. In the end, I think Max was not going to finish the race regardless of all that stuff he did, putting stress on his car, considering Checo, who was not pushing anywhere near as hard as Max, suffered the exact same fate, like right around the exact same time. Obviously, Max suffered it a little bit earlier, but maybe that's because he was pushing so much. But it was telling that Max literally said he will never, ever again do an easy outlap to save his tires when he could get track position instead. It's showing, kind of like you said, he is not going to be afraid to tell his engineers, screw you, I'm Max Verstappen. I'll do what I think is right because I am a World Drivers' Champion. Which you can't really argue with that. You know? If somebody says that, even if it's like a work-related issue, you know? Somebody's like, hey, that spreadsheet, my spreadsheet's better. I'm a World Drivers' Champion. I'd be like, you know what? You're right, man. I will always defer to somebody if they're like, hey, I'm a World Drivers' Champion, regardless of if it's related to driving or not. So I am excited to see this same old aggressive, overconfident Max all season long. And it's going to provide for some good racing. Like I said, if we get some Leclerc, Verstappen, chippy battles where their nice relationship starts to degrade a little bit and get more competitive, that's where this season could get really spicy. Really spicy. Next call.
Hey, J-Bone. This is Ben calling in from Seattle. I was just thinking after today's race, this is only my fourth F1 race that I've watched live. I just started to watch the races live at the end of last season. I was thinking about how much I enjoy watching these races live after watching all of Drive to Survive and how it feels like I know these athletes a bit better. And I think that makes the races that much more interesting and that much more enticing because you know these personal stories.
This is the beauty of Drive to Survive and why it has been so successful in getting people into the sport. Once you get to know the drivers and the teams, the sport becomes so much more than just cars driving around a track. It's about the interpersonal connection that you have with drivers and with teams that makes you emotionally invested in their success, or in many cases, downfall as well. There's a reason that every major sport right now in America is looking for quick growth is copying the Drive to Survive model, and that's because it works. It's time for some shout-outs. Shout out Sean Barry for sharing the podcast with your friend on Twitter and tagging me. Word-of-mouth recommendations to friends are the number one way you can help me grow Formula Bone into being the biggest Formula One brand it can be. So I would really appreciate it, guys, if you could just share the podcast this week with one friend who you already talk Formula One with. Super easy. Shout out to everyone who called into the Bone phone after the Bahrain Grand Prix. That number again is 1-833-200-0966 for a chance to have your voicemail played on the podcast. And as always, shout out to everybody in the Formula Bone Discord server, which you can join via the invite link in the description of this episode. It was bussin' all weekend long. You got to get in there. If you are looking for some more people to talk Formula One with, Formula Bone Discord, link to join is in the description of this episode. Before I get going, I would like to run you through the links that I've placed in the description of the episode. Speaking of which, you can chat with me as I live stream myself talking F1, playing the F1 video game, opening packs of F1 trading cards, and more on twitch.tv/FormulaBone. You can help support the Formula Bone F1 show financially by buying Formula Bone merch like this hat I'm wearing. I got the Formula Bone hat on right now. And that is at bolenmedia.com/shop. You can support the show financially in an even greater capacity by supporting today's sponsors. Shop Manscaped at manscaped.com with promo code FBO for 20% off plus free shipping. and bet Formula One and March Madness and more with MyBookie using promo code FORMULA at MyBookie.ag for a double deposit bonus. Stipulations apply. You can join the 200-plus member Formula Bone Discord server with the invite link I've placed in the description of this episode. And again, every link I just mentioned can be found in the description of this episode. You can follow me, J-Bone, everywhere on social media at Jared Borislow. That's JaredBorislow. Sadly, at J-Bone was taken everywhere, so I have to do my real name. And if you're now all caught up on the Formula Bone F1 show, but want to keep hearing my beautiful voice, I co-host a comedy podcast called the Bolen Podcast, where we share a ton of laughs covering a very wide variety of topics, including current events, non-F1 sports like football, music, food, funny news stories, stuff to Wikipedia, cool animals, insane history, and more, while also diving into some mental health discussion as well. If you like this podcast, I promise you will love the Bolen Podcast, which you can listen to wherever you're listening to this podcast right now. That's ROSSBOLEN, the Bolen Podcast. Folks, it's time for the NPR style sign-off. The Formula Bone F1 show is recorded in Austin, Texas, and brought to you by Bolen Media. It's hosted by me, Jared J-Bone Borislow, and I also produce the show because I'm a content machine. Kate Orris, Michael Heim, and I make all the podcast clips that you see on social media at Formula Bone. If you have video experience, hit me up. You can also make some videos for Formula Bone. Our iconic theme music and Twitch stream music is by 7 to Midnight. You can follow him on social media at 7TO Midnight. You can follow the show on social media by following at Formula Bone everywhere. You can watch the show on YouTube by searching Formula Bone. You can help the show gain new listeners by rating and reviewing the Formula Bone F1 show on Apple Podcasts and by rating it on Spotify. Until next time, J-Bone!